Noob D&D Dad here, and we are talking session 10 of the Army Veterans group that I am DMing for as a noob DM in the Curse of Strahd campaign. And let me just say, even though this is a lot harder to DM than the Essentials Kit Dragon of Icespire Peak, I am so grateful for pre-written adventures because I do not have time to sit down and go over all this. And I love that they just have it set up so that you can kind of just flip the pages, and as they go into each place, you can know who the NPCs are, what's in each room, and what they can find there. Like, I'm really grateful for the pre-written adventures. So when last we were with our heroes, they were tasked with clearing the forest right here. So you can see the gypsy camp. Where is it? Right there? Let's see. Yeah, right there. G. So across the river to the south, that strip of forest right there. Bleep. So Irina, is that her name? She had died from a hag lightning bolt. And the players brought them back to Madame Eva, as per Ismark, Irina's brother, who suggested to go to Madame Eva to do the resurrection. And the cost of her resurrection services is to clear out that forest. And so about 100 yards in, last game, they fought some zombies. Now they've pushed in the forest a little bit longer. And I was thinking of predetermining what to find there, and I decided to just use this. This bad boy right here from page 29. The random encounter in Barovia of day and night. So right off the bat, I rolled a 12 and an 8. So that is a Revenant. And not gonna lie, I don't think I've ever even looked at the Revenant stat block. I didn't know what it was. So I was like, So I just like flipped to the page and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's like a revenge type undead person. So a few modifications I made. So I made him riding a skeleton horse. I was going to say an undead horse, but it's a skeleton horse, because I was inspired by the skeleton horse from the Dragon Barrow and the Dragon of Icespire Peak, and I was like, you know what? Let's bring a skeleton horse. And then the players who playing the fighter, had just kept asking over and over and over and over and over for a magic greatsword, and I was like, you know what? This guy has a +1 greatsword, and so I had his eyes glowing white. And he's riding his horse at them, and they all roll initiative, and I feel like there's a glorious battle, but our monk is so tough, and so he's like, can I grapple him while he's on a horse? And I'm like, I was like, how about you do an acrobatics check, and if you pass that, then you can grapple him. I can't remember what the DC was, but I had it be pretty high. He totally achieved it, so I had him grapple him, and then I had the horse rider, the Revenant, he had to roll to stay on the horse, a DC 20 athletics check, and he failed, so he got pulled off of the horse and was grappled. And there's a part in his stat block that talks about how he can regenerate between rounds, and the way that I kind of like delivered it because you don't just want to be like, plus this many XP, or not XP, hit points, plus this many, minus this many, right? I feel like that kind of takes the disbelief out, and it turns it into just like a math game. So I said, you notice, what did I say? I wrote it down. I said, you notice his wound doesn't close up like last time, right? So this is when he had done radiant damage, which stopped the regeneration, right? Because they do damage, and then he like heals, and then the radiant damage happened, and then I just I don't even have him roll perception. I'm like, you notice it doesn't heal up like last time. So one thing about the Revenant I wasn't sure of, they're like, here's what he does, but if he's sworn vengeance against this person, then he does more stuff. And so I was like, oh, he doesn't really have sworn vengeance yet. So I had him doing his normal attacks until he got grappled. And then I was like, he swears vengeance against you. I don't even know. Like, it's like, I declare bankruptcy. It's like, I swear vengeance. I have no idea if that's how it works. But he swore vengeance against the guy who was grappling him. And so he does way more damage. And he ended up knocking him to 0 hit points, which I always enjoy because I feel like it makes the encounters more serious. Sometimes the players complain that I'm throwing them things that are out of their league, but they end up healing each other, or dying and being resurrected by the Dark Lord and having gills or poison bodies, or having all animals hate them. But either way, I think there should be some peril in the game. Okay, and I had to straight up put a stop to something that I was allowing that was going to get out of hand. So, Druid casts Spike Growth on the ground. Monk grapples the bad guy, and then drags them through spikes. Right, not this round, but in when they were fighting the hags. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then my players started being like, okay, we're all going to stand there, and then you grapple them, and then you pull them out of our reach. And so that's gonna spark what's it called, the an attack of opportunity. So I was kind of letting them do it, and then I was like, no, I got to read up on this. And no, absolutely not. That is not an attack of opportunity if someone pulls you out of their reach. So I was like, we're not doing that anymore. And they're all like, oh, and I'm just like, yeah, that's too much, guys. Here's a question for you, DMs or players. What is a time where you were doing something wrong and you had to change it, and how did the players or the DM react? How did that go? I'm curious. I think my players took it well. They were a little disappointed, but I think they understood that it was kind of game breaking. So I think it went well. Okay, and one thing that the players were not expecting. So when the guy was pulled down off of the skeleton horse, I was like, you know what? The skeleton horse is going to keep fighting, and he's going to have the same initiative. Sure. So they're like, okay, so it's my turn now, right? And it's like, no. The horse gets to go, and he starts like stomping people. And I just like that because they were surprised. And I was like, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? They're like, we thought he'd just run off. But so it was cool to have the horse start stomping people. But as all encounters go with a bunch of wily characters, they killed the bad guy, which is cool, of course. So this bad guy has rejuvenation and Anyway, it has two different ways that it comes back, right? It heals hit points, but then it also comes back from the dead. So the way that I played this is that the fighter cut his head off, right? Because he did the final blow, and I decided that it would die. And then I said his eyes stop glowing, right? So they start looting the body, and they're healing each other, right? So they can not be dead. And just because I like to tell you what things are found on the body, we get a +1 greatsword. We get 140 gold. I did that right out of the table from the 2024 Dungeon Master Guide. The individual loot came up with 140 gold, so two little sacks of 70 gold each. And then maybe this is meta or weird or whatever, but I've been liking this, turning it over into the hands of fate. I said, if one of you that you choose can roll a 90 or above on a D100, then you'll have a chance at getting a magic item from this guy. So anyway, the druid rolled and didn't do well, but I was like, well, thanks for playing, take it back. And I just like the idea that, yeah, you probably shouldn't get a magic item everywhere, but I like there just being like a little chance. So kind of that like dicey randomness feeling, which maybe people hate. I don't know. Do you like random treasure, or do you always determine all the treasure? Okay. And what else do we do? Okay. So I'm sitting here thinking about this body and how he's going to rejuvenate. So I'm like, okay, his eyes start glowing again, and the arms of the body start like going like this, like looking for the head, right? And then I created a DC that if the body could grab, if it could roll a certain number, then it could grab the head and put it back on, and it would heal. But it rolled really poorly, and so it didn't do that. So the players are looking at it, and they're like, wait. And they're like, so like one of them the monk sits on the body. They're like, yeah, we're not going to let you grab your head. And so then the head's sitting there. And then like the fighter's like, I got your sword. And then he's like, he looks at his sword and he's like, that's my sword. And he's like, what do you say? Finders, keepers, losers lose their head or something. And it's just like, but I'm expecting them to just destroy the body. I was really expecting them to destroy the body, but I don't know why I was expecting that. Because these guys, if anything, if they're consistent in any way, it is that they will do the most unexpected, crazy, off the wall stuff. And so they're like, they burn the body and they keep the head, and they discard the vampire head that they already have on a spear into the fire. They stick this new head onto the spear, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. So the body's been destroyed, but the head remains. So in my brain, I'm thinking that soul is still trapped in that body on that spear. But it has the vengeful glare, and it's declared vengeance against the monk. So periodically I am going to have the monk's going to have to roll a wisdom saving throw to see if the stare gets him or whatever. But Yeah, so they're carrying this head around, and their plan is to just periodically talk to him. And I'm just like, you guys are so weird. I never would have thought of that. And then they wanted to also take control of the skeleton steed, and I'm like, you know what? Sure. Let's see if I wrote down what DC I chose for the skeleton steed. Nope, I don't remember. But they rolled really good on animal handling. No, I think I put a DC 20. I'm like, a DC 20, and I didn't tell them this, but in my head, I'm like, if you roll a DC 20, then that horse is yours. But they rolled a 17, and so I've been trying to like incorporate cool stuff I hear from other internet people, DMs, and I was like, okay, you were close, so let's achieve the thing, but with like a downside. So it's like you gain control of this animal for 5 hours, and I rolled a D6, and I was like, for 5 hours. And he's like, for 5 hours, and then what? It bucks me off? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to buck you off and stomp you to death. So I'm going to have him have to re-roll each time, I think, or else it'll basically just start fighting him. So I feel good about that. Okay, so I roll the encounter again, and I get a stupid number 10. But it actually turned out pretty cool. The hidden bundle is clothing that belongs to a werewolf. And werewolves are awesome. So I'm like, you find this bundle in a log, and then I had somebody do a nature check, and then he rolled like a 25 or something. So I was like, you find wolf hair on this hair and on this clothing, and they're like, it's a werewolf. And at this point we had to go, but I was like, okay, one werewolf, and I was like, no. Then I rolled the dice, and I was like, 6 werewolves, and I was like, that's a little much. So I kind of modified it, so it's going to be 1 werewolf and 5 dire wolves. So that'll be like the next encounter. And the puppy that the ranger has been carrying around, he's trying to train to go track the wolves down. So he's having to sniff the clothing and head off. So I'm like, so he rolled a 21 on animal handling to get his puppy to do that. And I'm like, okay, so that symbolizes you kind of training it. So I think the puppy's still getting there, but I don't know, he's got a puppy, they're going to have a head on a stick, and they're going to have a skeleton horse. Like, what in the world? This is turning very weird. And since last time, I still haven't decided if, when they go back to the camp, if everyone's going to be dead and Strahd has taken Irina, or what were the other options I had? But I still haven't decided what's going to happen when they get back to the camp. But I don't just want it to be run-of-the-mill, I know that. So, anyway, this has been session 10 of the Curse of Strahd campaign with the Army Veterans group that I am a noob DM for. So I am having an absolute blast, and I hope they are too. I know they're a little frustrated with me because my noobisms or whatever, but I try to keep it fun and fair, and they keep coming back. So anyway, session 10. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Make sure and tell your mom.